So anyway, was just getting ready to have a discussion with Siddhananda. And again, this is something I've talked about in the past. And I think that a lot of people don't know about the Tibetan religions and the Dalai Lama, etc., etc. But he doesn't make any decisions without consulting the oracles. And the oracles are these lamas that go into a trance and then have this voice speaking through them. And the comment I've made on this many times is that a realized being is not going to consult an oracle. Why in the world are you going to consult a disembodied voice? Just because something's disembodied doesn't mean that it's a higher consciousness. So this is something that's, been something that needs to be looked into. And watching a documentary on that this guy has put into place on when he went to see the Dalai Lama and saw the oracle in motion. Some people that find out there's this oracle, they have a trouble, putting it into the framework of how does this fit within the spirituality. And the thing with that is they're told, well, just don't worry about it. If you can't fit it into your framework, you just pick and choose what you can, and the rest of it you just don't worry about. Well, that's not a smart thing to do. You don't just pick and choose and then, well, I'm just going to ignore that. That's putting your head in the sand. You could say, well, this part sounds good and that part sounds good, so I'm going to jump in, but this big, huge red flag over here, I'm just going to ignore. So again, it's not, why in the world would one ignore something like this? It's not something to be ignored. Also, when the Dalai Lama, they're questioning him about it, and he's, I think this, and I think that. In other words, he doesn't know. He's giving his opinion. And he's talking about the oracles and, how these things operate, etc. Again, if you think and you don't know, why in the world would you rely on that? It says that Padmasambhava, when he came to Tibet, they were doing the Bon. The Bon traditions are a shamanic tradition. And that he subdued these spirits. Well, when you subdue it, and this is what happens when you are doing a spiritual path, these things become subdued. One goes beyond it. So why in the world are you then going to resurrect it and go in harness with it? The point is to go beyond that, not to cultivate it. So at the highest point of their spiritual, this is the person they have leading and guiding them, does not make a move without consulting the oracles.
Yes, and like you say, whatever, it doesn't mean, it's a lower consciousness, and whatever messages are coming then are not the best for them and humanity. It could not be that way. It's just as confused as whatever's within them at the time. So, it's within that dualistic realm, that confusion. I don't know, so I've got to seek out something else. And obviously that wisdom is not within themselves. It's not coming directly from their own experience.
So rather than going beyond the shamanic thing, still trying to incorporate it. And this is why there are so few that reach enlightenment. Again, most of the ones that reach enlightenment are not the lamas that are wearing the robes. It's more often than not the yogis that are in the caves, that are not practicing Bon. They're not practicing the shamanism. They are not engaging in these types of things. It's again, I think it's part of the tradition that people are really not aware of that takes place. Um, so it's contrary to popular belief, Tibetan things is not pure Buddhism. It's really mixed with a lot of shamanic things that, again, when Padmasambhava went there, he wanted to subdue. He wanted to go beyond that. He wanted to, so again, why are they resurrecting it? Why are they continuing to put that on such a high level and caliber? And so again, when one is making a journey, a spiritual journey, or anything in life, you can't just turn a blind eye to it and say, well, pick and choose what you can deal with, and the rest that you can't deal with, just turn a blind eye to it.
That's how these things continue in motion as well. When they're not questioned, you turn a blind eye, and it just continues, to be there and create that confusion. So it's in truth, it does not have that within it. It's just unvarying, and to say that some is true and some isn't, I mean, that just seems to lend to so much confusion.
Well, it's that same thing of saying, well, like the same thing I have with Nityananda and these kind of things. They may be saying nice words on the surface and maybe giving a nice message, but their actions behind the scenes, what's going on, like one of the latest things, you see a video of one of Nityananda's people, this old man that wants to go into the temple to worship. He slaps him and then kicks him. I mean, very brutal, extremely brutal. And so again, you can't say, well, he does this thing is nice, so we're just going to turn a blind eye to the rest. It's okay. Why give money to the church, the mafia, but they're engaging in every, negative activity there is. So because they give a little bit charitably here and there, you're going to turn a blind eye to it? I mean, again, these are things that should be looked into. These are things that need to be understood before jumping into any type of modality. If you come up with something that is, not fitting in, with a tradition that's supposed to be taking one beyond mind, why is one engaging in, allowing some sort of non-bodied entity to take over? Okay, same thing. You can have somebody that's a psychic that can predict things, but doesn't mean they've got their life together. 9 out of 10, their life is not together. It's not wisdom that they're giving. So again, in realization, when all deconstructs and one is, you're not consulting something, you don't become a channel for something, that wisdom is known directly, and that's what can liberate mankind, not some oracle that's going into trance, and Lord only knows what's coming through. Again, on this video, you can see these two oracles come together, and they're like ready to duke it out. It's a very violent, very, it's not this wonderful thing that people want to think that it is. So again, it's just something that I wanted to touch base on, and I will give a few places where to find these. You can look it up online under the Oracle videos. There's quite a few of them up there. And just be aware of what's being touted. You know, there is nothing to do with shamanism when it comes to going forward to realization and getting off the wheel of karma. All shamanism is a dualistic endeavor and has to deal with this world. Objects, subject, object, that's it. It's not going to take one beyond that. It's not going to take one to realization. It's not going to take one to a still mind. It's just not. So again, this is just being put out there for people to begin to look deeper and to say, you know, that you don't just say, well, I'm accepting this and that, and I'll turn a blind eye to the rest. That's not a smart thing to do. It's not something one should do. Like I said, I've been involved in spiritual paths before, and when I found out there were things there that I could not, I could not accept, they were not part and part and parcel of what an enlightened path should be, then I stood up and left. You stood up and left. Because you can't sit there and justify and rationalize away things. Because then it's not having full integrity. If it's not having full integrity, then how can it take you to realization? Again. So just again, something else to understand, look at, to see what's there and understand what is happening. Again, you know, the Dalai Lama has been trained as a statesman. That's it. But the Buddha, I guarantee Buddha does not consult oracles. Buddha did not come to enlightenment to consult oracles. So to say that the Dalai Lama is Chenrezig, is this Buddha of compassion, reborn and reborn and reborn, you know, again, no Buddha is going to consult oracles that go into trances in order to guide the spiritual community. That's just not going to happen. So I will leave it at that, and I know I will have a lot of people very upset with me again, but that's okay, because I'm here to bring whatever light I can bring and dispel some shadows, and just try to say, you know, find out for yourself, be willing to make the inner journey, and see if what's said here holds water or doesn't. And that's all. Namaste.
Namaste.